Okay, you made it to episode 3. Good job. Thank you. um, so, just a quick recap. In episode 1, we kind of went over mono synths, dual phonic synths, very early stringer polyphonic synths. And then episode 2 kind of went into rise of the analog polys that kind of took over. And at the end of that episode, the DX7 came in, kind of changed everything. So that's where we are now. This is a really short era, 1984 to 1986. If you haven't watched the other two, what we're doing here is I'm going through all the different eras of synthesizers, trying to figure out what's the best era. And I broke them down according to me. You know, you might not agree with these, can come up with your own way of breaking them down. And again, everyone likes different stuff, so don't get like butthurt about what I like or don't like, or someone in the comments or whatever. We all like different stuff. Who cares? Okay, so here we are, 1984. So the DX7 came out in 83, kind of hurt all the other brands. Everyone was struggling, figuring out what to do. So everything's basically polyphonic. Everything had to be polyphonic. Like the DX7 was known for its electric pianos and bell sounds and all that stuff. And that's what people wanted. They wanted, you know, synths to play and more realistic sounds, I guess, which isn't really what I look for in synthesizers, but that was what they wanted at the time. You know, the mid 80s, you're kind of losing a lot of the weird factor, not only in synthesizers, but in music. You listen to late 70s, early 80s, like new wave, dark wave, experimental stuff. There's a lot going on. By the mid 80s, we're more doing synth pop and new wave by the numbers. So what you got going on is for some of the brands like Sequential, they had Sequential Circuits had their, earlier they had their Prophet 5, Prophet 10, amazing. Then their Prophet 600, not as great, but, a lot cheaper. And then you get to this era and you had the Sequential Max, you had the 6-track, you had the Split 8, also called the Pro 8, depending what part of the world you're in, and the multi-track. Every one of these synthesizers is using the same exact chips inside. It's funny because you could look them up and find like Reddit posts and whatnot of people arguing like, oh, the multi-track doesn't sound as good as the 6-track and all this stuff. They literally have the same filters, oscillators, everything. They're all the same guts in all these synthesizers. The only thing different in all of them is like the operating system, like the multi-track and 6-track. You can have like 6 different totally different patches on a key instead of playing polyphonic, which sounds cool, but I'm like, why? I don't know. I almost bought them. I don't really have anything in my studio to show you from this era other than this one. So I actually considered buying some stuff just for this stupid video. I was like, almost bought a multi-track, almost bought a 6-track that someone chopped up and has it as just sort of like a sound module. But I just don't want them. They're just, I don't want any of them. So yeah, all those sequentials, they're all the same synthesizer, all based on the same chips. They're fine. They're some of the cheapest vintage synthesizers you can buy. But if you have a Prophet 5 or a Prophet 10 or even a Prophet 600, there's nothing these synths can offer you at all. The same chips are also used in other synthesizers of this era, like The Akai AX60, I think, has the same exact chips in it, but at least that one has real controls still on it. Most synths from this era just went with the blank panel and up and down arrows instead of knobs and sliders, which is also annoying, but people wanted things to look more like the DX7. So, and it was a way to cut costs. So bad. Lots of bad stuff happening. Yeah, so you got your, but at least with the AX60, it has like a default where the resonance is really crazy, which actually ends up giving it a little bit more character. So yeah, that's one of the more interesting ones. Akai also did the AX80, which was a dual DCO synth. It doesn't sound as warm as the AX60, but it's 2 oscillators. I also think it has like at least 3 LFOs in that thing. Instead of having one LFO that you can route to like oscillator, filter, amp, which is the usual routine. The AX80, each of those sections has its own LFO, which is kind of cool because you can get a lot more, different rates, different movement going in there to try and liven up the DCO sound. And it also looks like the Knight Rider car, which is pretty cool. I've owned it twice, but I just sold my other one, my second one. Because again, I have other stuff that just sounds better, and it just wasn't offering me anything different. But yeah, the Crumar Bitone, very nice sounding synthesizer. They tend to crap out totally randomly. I got one that looked brand new from the original owner. It sounded great for like a few weeks, ended up selling it, and it just totally crapped out on the buyer. I ended up like refunding him and just selling it for parts. You see these all the time with issues. The Crumar stuff just wasn't built that great. And someone might get offended by that, but it is what it is. Sounds wonderful. You also have some early samplers going on in this era, like the Ensoniq Mirage. Sequential did the Prophet 2000. I think the K250 came out in this era. So you have some early samplers. But yeah, as far as analog stuff goes, it was all just dying off. It was all just either like kind of dull sounding, like the JX8P and JX10 by Roland. Really mediocre. I don't know. The Roland stuff generally is geared more towards popular music, I feel. Not in the 70s, but like in the 80s, definitely. It just has that sound. It seems more for like pop, in my opinion. But so they don't do anything particularly interesting. You had a Casio CZ series, which was their version of FM, their take on the DX7. So this is the last of the analog stuff for several years. After this, there's nothing analog until like 93, I think. So this is it. But besides the like kind of crappy dying off models, you did have some last ditch efforts to prove how cool analog could be, like mostly by Oberheim, I think is the only one who did it, but they'd put out their Matrix 12 massive analog synth with a deep modulation matrix, huge, amazing synthesizer that goes for way too much money. So I'm never going to have one. Also the Expander, which is kind of like a keyboardless, like kind of slimmed down Matrix 12. And then they had their Matrix 6, which is very cool. Unfortunately, didn't have any of the controls on it. So those are actually really cool analog synths of this time. the last of Overheim, and it killed Overheim because people just weren't interested. And you also have sort of the coming of hybrid synthesizers. Instead of going totally digital, some people tried a combination. Sitting right here, this is the Korg DSS1. It's an early sampler, but it also has, like, you can draw digital waveforms or use the waveforms from the DW6000 and 8000. But it's analog filters in here. And so it sounds really cool. This and the DW8000 that also had digital oscillators, analog filters. The Ensoniq ESQ1, same deal, analog filters with digital oscillators, and the Kawai K3. These are all like early hybrids and are really interesting. A lot more interesting than this last batch of analogs. And a lot more interesting than the DX7 to me. I don't know. FM synthesis is definitely cool and has its place. I have one FM synthesizer. I don't think I need any more of that. But yeah, just... It's a lovely sounding machine. It's really big. You're not even seeing how deep it is. It's really heavy. It's really clunky. It's really slow. It's like everything of this time. It has a floppy drive, but first thing I do when I buy these synths, I get that out of there, put a USB drive in it. Came loaded with, just tons and tons of patches. I thought maybe it would speed it up, but it doesn't. So, so it still takes like a long time to load a patch into this thing. But it's fine. You boot up like a whole system at a time, which gives you, I think, like, I can't remember, 10 patches or 12. I don't know. Maybe it's like 32 patches at a time. I don't know. I just got this thing and I barely used it. I haven't made any sounds with it yet. I've just sort of been messing around with it. But this is the only synth I have from this era. So I guess I'll play a little bit of this. So this is a sort of different video. I'm going to actually have Vulture Culture demos on this video. So thank you very much, Vulture Culture. He has like some of the cooler synths from this era. And I didn't want to buy anything for this video. So yeah, it's just going to be some Vulture Culture demos and me playing this. But I think that's all that happened in this era. You got early samplers, you got a few hybrids, you got the end of analog synthesizers. Mostly, they're all very samey. I'll say that. If you buy a bunch of synths from this era, there's gonna be a lot of duplicate sounds you're making. Whereas if you go back and watch episode 1, I feel like you could buy 10 synthesizers and have 10 totally different things going on. But yeah, that's about it. DX7 came, changed everything. This is everyone struggling. Analog dies. And then in the next episode here, we'll cover sort of like the world of digital. Everything goes digital. You got your big workstations coming up. So I guess I'll see you then. we'll nail this down. We'll figure out what era is the coolest, for you, for some other guy, for your other friend. Everyone should have a different answer. Like, don't get all uppity in the comments. All right, see ya.